1.16. It has 127 releases so far. Only 59. It has a large popularity nowadays, and it had around 3 lakh downloads last month. And there are 219 open issues. Coming to requirements, how can you set up Nightwatch? The basic thing you need is Node.js, as it's powered in Node.js framework. You need Java JDK, which should be greater than or equal to 7. Coming to the jar, I would like to talk about this Selenium download. So there are 3-4 kind of jars available via NPM today. One is Selenium download. So if you download Selenium download jar, you will get 2 things. You will get a Selenium server standalone jar, and you will get a Chrome driver jar along with it. And there is a separate jar which is Selenium server standalone jar. So if you download that, you just get the Selenium server as a complete NPM package. And there is one more download jar available, which is a Selenium standalone jar. So through that jar, you get a lot of drivers. You get Chrome, you get IE, you get Firefox. So based on your requirement, you can download different jars. So as per the demo which I am going to show later, I am going to be using Selenium download. So I need the Selenium server and I will be using Chrome driver. The next thing you need is Nightwatch, which you can directly install via NPM. It's a simple command, NPM install Nightwatch. Next thing, if you want to run tests in Firefox, there will be 2 things needed. So if you are on Selenium 2 and any version above than 2, and you want to use Firefox, and you are on Firefox version less than 48, you want to use the Firefox driver, which you have to install separately. And if you are Selenium 3 users, and you are on the latest versions of Firefox, you need a separate Gecko driver. So Gecko driver is driver available for all the Gecko-based browsers like Firefox. So Gecko driver internally simulates the HTTP calls into Marinate, which is the automation protocol based on Firefox. How Nightwatch works. So it's as simple as that. There will be a Nightwatch, it will send a HTTP request session to the Selenium server API that will create a session and it will throw you back with the result. So generally there will be 2 commands. One will be the selector and the second will be what action you want to do. Generally with every command it sends 2 actions along with it. What selector I want to use and what will be the action for it. It can be a click, it can be a set value, it can be anything. Next, coming to the main thing of command queue execution. So in Nightwatch, as you know, it's a JS framework. All the JavaScript commands are asynchronous, as you know. So how does Nightwatch actually handle those asynchronous commands? If you see, there's a sample example. We'll come to syntax later when I show the demo. But see only this part. So we have a console log, and what does it do? It can be a client or a browser, your object. You are going to a URL, you are clicking on login, and you are ending the page. So what happens in Nightwatch is, it will take these as, it will have a command queue, and these 3 will be as separate commands there. So the first command would be the URL, and the command argument would be the URL link. The second command would be click, and command argument would be login, and the third command would be the end with no command arguments. So when you go next, when this test actually runs, this will go to the navigation, click on that URL, then click on the login, and it will end. Now, if you see, sometimes there can be cases that you have gone to a site and you want to use the data out of it. Simple example, like you go to the URL, you click on login, and you get some result out of it. Now you want to use that result, and then only you want to move forward in your test. So this is an asynchronous command, all JavaScript commands, like you fire some command, and then you wait till the result comes up, and then you do your next step. So if you see a sample example that going to a URL, clicking on login, you do a browser call, and then you want to end your test. So what happens in this case? First, when the command queue is actually formed initially, what it will do, it will have only 3 commands: the URL, click, and the end, with same arguments. URL will have a command argument as WordPress, click will be action, it will have a command argument as result, and there will be an end. But when the command queue actually starts executing, then is there when the result will come into the picture. So what it will do, it will go to the URL, and when it clicks, so after click it will see that you are waiting for some result, and then you want to do a browser pause. Then it will try to fetch the result, it will wait till that result, it will do a pause, and then come out of it. So when the commands actually start executing, then it sees what command you have actually passed. If you see the next example, say this. You want to get a value out of an input, which is result, and then you want to reuse that value and you are putting it into a text variable, and then you want to set that value of text. What do you think would be the output of this? Anyone? What do you think when you run this, what will you get in the set value? How will it execute? If you see the command queue. Will it work fine, or will it throw some error? Will it go through? what happens exactly here, the set value, when you are actually using the set value output and you're putting it into a text, this text is actually at this point of time undefined. Because the command which you have passed of result, the result when it doesn't know when the result value will actually be fetched. Because it's an asynchronous command. You have passed the command, you don't know when the result will be fetched. So in order for this for you to run, you actually need to do this. So what will the command queue do? It will get the value and then the result, and then it knows that the next command is result.value equals text. So the first command would be getting the value from the input. Next command would be getting its value, putting it into text, and then next command would be setting the value to the text. If you see the previous example which I showed, why this would not work is because in the command queue, the first initially when it would execute, it would do a get value, getting the input, and the next command would directly be set value because this is an asynchronous. Then it would not have in the command queue. It would actually have it when it starts executing. Then you have to, if you want to run it, you have to put it inside the same loop because then the command queue would understand. Because at this point of time, at the definition only, they would say that text is not defined because there is no value inside it. At this point of time, it would actually wait for the value and then set the value inside it. So this is how Nightwatch actually does. So all the commands in its command queue would be synchronous. It would wait for every command in the command queue to run. So it actually has a command queue array internally. And what it does is, with every command which you pass in, it adds that into an array, and there will be a wait till that command is successfully run. This is how it works. This is how it actually handles all the asynchronous commands. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So if there is a block, so the get value has a block which has a different command inside it.
Yeah.
And there is one more block which is outside of the get value, which is about something like, let's say, output value or set value command. So for those two commands as two different blocks, there will be two command queues.
No, command queue will be one.
Command queue will be one.
Yes.
So then in the previous example, if the command queue is one, why it is not waiting for the text? Because the command queue is one, the set value will be executed after get value.
No, when the command queue is when the command queue is actually set up, once you write the test, initially the command queue would do what? It would take the get value and it would take the set value. It would not take the asynchronous thing inside its execution. When you actually start executing, then it would take the get value and it would take the next command because you are trying to wait for the result and putting it into something, and then it will do the next action. So this asynchronous command comes into play when the command queue actually starts executing. When initially, if your text looks like this, and you try to see the command queue, that time you will see that the set value, it will say the text is undefined because there is no value inside. When it actually starts executing, it takes all the asynchronous command. So the problem is the way you write your test would be the same way how your tests would run. So Nightwatch would be, if I'll show you a demo script, the way the tests are written, the execution order would be the same. So there will be no issue that this command is run first and this command is run later. Because it handles all the asynchronous command in a synchronous manner inside its command. If any one of you have worked in Protractor earlier, maybe, seeing the JavaScript commands, there all the commands are asynchronous, same way. And you have to handle each command result into a separate one. But Nightwatch takes care of all of these asynchronous commands through its command queue. So it keeps putting all the commands in its queue and tries to run everything synchronously.
What is the purpose of me joining this Nightwatch architect? What are the challenges? What is this Nightwatch is bringing that to you? What the output is it? Why we should join it? Why we should do this?
I think you will get that answer once you finish this. Next, coming to the PageObject API. So how has a Nightwatch built in support for the PageObject model? If you see, how can you declare a simple page in a Nightwatch? So what does Nightwatch do? It has inbuilt support. So you can provide all the elements. So why you declare pages? So you want all your selectors at one place and you want all the actions of that page to be at one place. So how does Nightwatch do that? So whenever you declare a new page, you will see that it provides support for writing the elements separately, there will be sections separately, and there will be commands separately. So you can actually distinguish which are your selectors, what sections that are there on the page and which actions you actually want to execute. So if you see the elements, so there are different ways of defining elements here. So if you see that I've tried to create a login page which has an element username. So there's a selector which is input username or email. So this hash is used for the ID. This is CSS selector. So input with the ID of username or email. The next is the password. The input with the ID as password. So the one thing which how I've declared username and how I've declared password is one and the same thing. Either you can have it in the object as a selector or you can directly declare it. If you want to use XPath by any chance inside your element, there is a way to provide a locator strategy XPath. Because Nightwatch uses by default the strategy is CSS selector. If you want to use Nightwatch, you can provide a locate strategy and then you can provide your selector. So I have a username element, I have a password element, and I have a login button. Username and password are using CSS selectors and login is using the XPath selector. Next, coming to the sections. So in a page, there can be, like suppose I have a menu and I have some elements under it. And there are some elements around the page. So I want that in a menu, the elements which I have, that is one section. So I can actually declare it as an object saying section. And I have a header section saying this is a site load. And there can be n number of elements under it. So it's easily accessible and readable. If someone else wants joins your team tomorrow, it's easy for him to understand which elements are defined under which sections and which elements just are lying outside the page. The next thing you see which is on the top, which is commands. Login page command. So coming to the next one. So what does login page command do? These are all the actions which I want to do just on the login page. So I can declare an object saying that setting the username, setting the password, and I want to do a login. And on the top you see I have a URL. So if I declare different pages, I can even have different URLs on each page object which I declare. If I want to go to some page, login page, so I'll have a URL defined. If I want to go to some other page, say my site, so I'll have a separate URL in that page object. So this way it clearly defines which pages are doing what actions and are using what selector. So if you see the set username, it's as simple as that, doing a this.set value and setting your username. And this username parameter would be coming from your test file, what you're passing. And setting the password and doing the login. There are several PageObject command API methods available today, which you can directly use. As you see, the second method which is click. So I've used it directly like using this.click. And I can use it directly in my test file, saying I want to wait for element present. So my test file says that you wait for element present and the login button. So I can do like browser.wait for element present and my login button. It's as simple as that. Coming to assertions and expectations. So there are two types of assertions done in Nightwatch. One is using the expect library. The expect library is based on the chai expect assertion library. I think you might have heard about chai. So how do you use the elements here? It will be like expect element dot to be visible, dot to be present. The way of writing expectation. And the second way of writing is assertions. Assertions is built in the Nightwatch. This is assert verify library. So there are two types under this, assert and verify. So what will assert do? If you use the assert library, like assert something not to be visible. So assert library, if any of the test fails in the assert, within one assert, it will not run the others. It will just fail it. And what does verify do? Verify will actually log your failure and then it will move on. This is the difference between using assert and verify. Next, coming to some tips and tricks of using CSS selector, which are very handy when you are actually writing tests. The first one, if you have a class name which ends with something like WordPress.com. So you use something, you have a and you have a href and you have a class within it. So you directly like href ends with WordPress. So if you want to use ends with, you have to use the dollar symbol along with it. The second one, if you have a class which starts with, then you use this caret symbol in Word. If you have a class with name which contains something, then you use a star along with it. If you want to directly access some childs, so there are two ways. If you know that this is always going to be a direct child in my HTML, you directly use a div and then you use an arrow and then you use an anchor. So if you have a anchor tag just below the div element, and you always know this is going to be the next first child of it. So you use a div and you use an arrow and then you use a. But if you know that it's going to be a child or it's going to be a subchild, there can be n children inside a parent, then you use a div with a space and you directly use your class. Now, if you want to use some place that next adjacent element of the same parent. So if you see the HTML and you have one page, so there can be n number of children inside. Suppose I have an input class with a username. It says input.username. And then I want to access one more input which is inside that input pair. So I use it like input.username plus input. So plus is a symbol just for using the adjacent element. Now, if you have a unordered list and you want to access any list out of it, which is very common in all the web pages, then you use it something like this. So ul-list, what does it say? ul-list would be an unordered list with the ID as list because hash is used for IDs. And then you use a li, and then you say some nth of type 3. So what will this do? This will go to the unordered list, which has an ID list, and it will go to the list item, and it will fetch the third element of it. Nth of type 3 will be the third element. So it starts index starts from 1. So 1, 2, 3. So it will fetch the third element from the list. There are a lot of selectors like this which will be very helpful when you are trying to automate your web pages and websites. Okay, there are few command line options in Nightwatch. When you run your test, there will always be a config file where you mention all your test settings. So -config you can mention, it can be lying anywhere, so that will be the path of your config file. There will be an environment. So Nightwatch provides a way to run tests in different environments. So you can have a default environment, like you want to have a different environment for your local setup. Then you want to have an environment where you want to run tests on CI, maybe using Phantom. So you have a different environment settings for that. So the way you run it with providing this environment tag. Next is the test. The test tags comes handy when I want to run only a specific test. So I have a test folder and I have 3-4 test files lying inside it. But I want to run only one, I don't want to run all. So this is the way you provide -test, or you can provide just -t, and you provide your test file name. So it just runs that. Otherwise, when you directly, if you don't specify the test file, it just runs all the files inside the test folder in sequential order. The next is -test case. So this would be one test can have n number of test cases. So if you want to run a specific test case, you mention this one. The next is the group. If you want a group of test cases, suppose you have a main test folder parent and you have separate folders, subfolders inside it. Like you have a login folder, you have a page folder, you have separate folders inside it. And you want to run test only inside that particular folder. So you're grouping your test inside subfolders. So if you want to run the test, you provide it with the group tag and you pass your directory name. The next is the tag. So there are a lot of places when you want to run or skip tags, or you want to run tests only where you provide tags. So you pass it with a tag criteria. You add it to your test file, you add some tags, and then you give that tag name. It's as simple as that. And if you want to skip some of the tests, you use the skip tags. ES6 with Nightwatch. So if you have seen previous examples, any of the examples, like if you see here, we have used export default instead of, if any one of you have worked or seen Nightwatch earlier, there would be a way of writing like module.exports and then using the object, module.exports equal to something. So this is the ES6 way of writing. So what is ES6? ES6 is actually a scripting language which are all the JavaScript, the action script, they are all governed by ES6. It's a new way of writing. There are a lot of things along with ES6 which comes in. So if you want to use ES6 with Nightwatch, which I'm going to show you how it can be used. So you have to create a variable.rc file and you just pass these two things, the presets and the plugins, and you add the following things to your Nightwatch config. You have to require it and you can run in ES6. So before we move to demo, anyone would have any questions? Yeah.
There is a file that is RC which is config.
Yeah.
It is, I'm not sure, but it is similar to the file which are used now. And start inside page of there are things like we can decide our page URL, we have a sections, we have the elements, so what is the better part of Nightwatch over them, and how Ajax request will be handled?
No, so Ajax request, as I have already explained, how does Nightwatch handle all the asynchronous requests, whatever comes in. The same way to handle. And this variable.rc file is actually different. This is just used for writing. If you want to write your test of Nightwatch in ES6, this is just used for that. If you want to use the basic way of writing this, that would just directly go in. You don't need to install anything. I actually wanted to write my test in the newer ES6 way, so that's why I've used a separate config file just for using ES6.
So there is no special setting or special things to handle Ajax with because Ajax is not looking to behavior now. Verifying the elements or the elements are there already and so there is something which we need to do like doing Selenium using
Like?
Selenium
Okay.
Ajax ingress. So is there any specific thing I need to do with the Nightwatch?
It's all built in. You don't have to when you write text on the
Sorry, can you pass them back?
Because it's a Node.js.
and usually when you actually want to fetch or any HTTP or anything like this, you just go on.
That is what that is what I thought of because it is a Node.js library, so there is a better way to handle that.
In fact, all the node-related activities, all the Appium modules, JavaScript modules, directly
Oh, yeah.
to inbox is related.
How feasible it will be to automate an application that has fusion charts and using Django, PC.js libraries? We also test it with Nightwatch. I might not have experience of it. Maybe you can tell me using it. Okay. Okay, so without moving further, we can move to the demo. Yeah.
So,
Yes, you can. Yes, there is a way of there's a similar way how you write test in Ruby Cucumber, like giving the step definition, given then there is a way to do it, and there are even extra gems provided for that. Yeah, you can do it even here. There are actually gems Nightwatch Cucumber also provided for the same purpose, which you can specially install just for writing tests in Cucumber.
you mentioned about writing tests. If you want to write run or execute specific tests out of all the tests you have written. Also, you have concept called tags. So, on what basis will you differentiate whether you want to use a tag or test?
So if you provide a tag and then you provide a tag parameter in the command line option, then it will run based off tags. I think I didn't get your question.
So the question would be more specific to on what basis you decide. Like, I know, as you mentioned that if you provide a command called like tags and then run your test case, probably all the tests which have that particular tag will execute. So the question is, why would I go for a tag and why would I go for a test?
So test is something you want to run only a specific test file. So I have a test folder and I have n number of test files. I want to run only say login test file. So I provide a tag like -t and I provide like / my login test file. And within that login test file also there are tags. And I don't want to run all the test cases inside that login file. Then I provide the test file and then I also provide the tags. So it will run only those inside the test file which have the tag which I am providing.
So that I can achieve without specifying the tag as well, right? Because let's say some test cases I provide that test and I would say that all the test cases which have this particular tag only execute that one. And I don't provide a tag, that means Nightwatch will not execute the other test.
No, I think you got it wrong. If you provide the test as a command line option, it will take which test files you want to run. If you provide tag, which tags associated with the test cases you want to run. So you can have a test file, say a login test file, and then you have 3 different test cases inside that. Guys, say testing with the incorrect username password, testing with the correct username password. Now I want to run only the incorrect one. I don't want to run the correct one. So I provide the test file, the login test file, and I provide a tag, which I provided to the incorrect test case. So it will run only that. So there can be n number of test cases inside one test file. So I provide a test file and I provide the tag in my test file.
So tags would be more specific to
All the what test cases you want to run.
in a particular file.
In a particular file. Yes. So before wasting any time, I would like to show some of the files before I show the demo. So there is one nightwatch.conf.js. This is that file. So what it does, I have required a Babel code which I need for just for ES6. If you don't want to use ES6, you can skip this. Then I have a separate file saying Nightwatch.js. So Nightwatch.js actually contains all my test settings, which I'll come to after this. Which will contain what settings I want in my local, what settings I want in my CI, which browser I want to run in CI, all those things. And this is something which Nightwatch provides out of the box just to save the screenshots. So if you have any failure or any error and you want to save screenshot and your test fails, so whenever your test fails, there will be a screenshots directly created automatically and all the failure things will go inside that. So you'll get PNGs out of it. So this is out of the box way provided by Nightwatch just to save your screenshots in case of failure or errors. Coming to the most important file, which is the Nightwatch.js. So the first thing which we have mentioned here is the SRC folder. So if you see the project structure, I would have some folder saying where are all my tests running. So all my test files would be under some one folder, which is the test folder. There can be different separate subfolders also inside this test. But the main directory is the test folder. The next is the output folder. So where will all my reports be generated? So it generates all the reports by default in the XML format. Nightwatch does it. And the reports directory is by default the parent directory. So it will be /reports. The PageObject part. So where are all my pages going to be located? So all my pages file, the login page, the home page, all the pages will be inside the PageObject. So this will be the part to my PageObjects folder. The next is live output tool. When does this help? If you want to run your test, like I want to run a test on two different browsers, like Chrome and Firefox, and I want to run it parallel. So if I'm running it parallel, if you provide live output equal to false, it doesn't give output in a detailed format. If you provide live output true, it would give you format in a detailed one. Like it's running in Chrome and all the tests which are running, all the details will be provided. By default, it's false. So if you give it false, you will not see a detailed report in the console log. It's just for that. The globals path. The globals path is a globals.js file. So if you see this, sometimes you have some timeouts or you want to do a few things which are global. Like suppose for these two examples. Like my default wait for condition time outstate is 15 seconds. So by default I want to wait for 15 seconds. The next is abort on assertion failures. Whenever my assertion fails, I want always the test to be aborted and not to run forward. So I provide it. So all some global properties which you want to use across the files. You can have a globals.js file and you can provide it here. It can be your variables, it can be your objects, it can be anything which you want to use across. The next is the Selenium settings. The start process 2 is that Nightwatch will automatically spawn the process and end it. So it automatically takes care of spawning the Selenium process and ending it by this setting. So this is start process equals 2. If you don't want Selenium to automatically handle the start and end, you can give it false. And you can start your Selenium server separately, then you can run your test separately. So you control when the Selenium starts or when the Selenium ends. Next is the server part. This will be the server part to do the Selenium job. Next is the host and the post, which are straightforward. Coming to the CLI argument. So if I want to run test on Chrome or Gecko driver, so I provide my Chrome driver and Gecko driver bin paths here. As simple. Next, coming to the test settings. So if you see the test settings, there are too many things inside that. One is the default. Default is the default test setting, which says that my launch URL, so my demo is using WordPress.com site. So it gives the launch URL as WordPress.com. And test workers. Test workers is the next thing which will contain two things, enabled and workers. So test workers helps you when you want to run your tests in parallel. So you have a test folder and you have 4-5 files inside it. All these files are independent of each other. They are not dependent on each other. So I want to run all of these separately and parallel, and I want to see the output fast. So I can give the test workers option as true. And workers auto, it will take care as many number of files they are there in your test folder. It will spawn as many number of browsers. So if I have 4 test files, it will open 4 browsers for me. This is by the option workers auto. I can control it by giving the number itself. I can give 3, 4, how many browsers I want to control. Next is the screenshots option. The first thing which I showed in the conf.js, which is if you want screenshot to be enabled, where would be your screenshots directory you want it to be, and you want to save screenshots on error also on any failure also. Now, coming to this setting. So these were the default settings which I want to use everywhere. Now I have some setups which I have a local Chrome inside. So I want to run my test locally in the Chrome browser. So this settings is just for that. So what I do, I provide my browser name Chrome, JavaScript is enabled, and I want to accept all the SSL certificates as true. So what will this setting do and what will default? And if you see below, I have a local Firefox setting as well. So I have separate settings for my local Chrome browser, separate settings for my local Firefox, and I have a default settings apps which are anyways going to be used by these two environments. So default are the common settings, and Chrome and Firefox have their own separate settings. Okay. Yeah, you can do that, yes. There's a Firefox profile as well which you can mention. Yes. So there's a Firefox options if you want to do anything with Firefox anywhere, that you don't want to load images, you don't want to do something else. There are different options provided. So you have to create a Firefox profile and mention the settings there. Okay. So quickly moving to how I want to run tests. So if you see my package.js, so these were all the dependencies which will just be installed by doing the npm install. So I have written separate. I want to have separate script for my separate browsers like Chrome, Firefox, Safari. So I have mentioned separate scripts here. What does it do? Test local Chrome. It will do a node ensure Selenium jar exists. So before I run any test, I just want to be sure that my Selenium and Chrome driver are actually installed. So there will be a file which says ensure Selenium jar exists.js. So it just takes my bin path and it just ensures that in my bin I have Selenium and Chrome. It just does that. Because if I don't check this, then there's no way of running the test going down further than it. It does this, it goes to my bin Nightwatch config, it takes my Nightwatch conf.js and I've provided my environment as local Chrome. So if you see earlier which I showed Nightwatch.js, my environment name was local Chrome. So that is why in my package.js, if you see, I have provided local Chrome. And I have a separate script which runs on Firefox, and I have a separate script which runs headless on Phantom.js and everything. So if you see, I'll quickly run a sample test. So I gave a command like npm run test local Chrome. The test local Chrome was mentioned in my package.js. So if you see, I have 3 test files in my test. So this will spawn 3 browsers for me. All of my tests are independent of each other. So they don't rely on any of them. So one will do the login, one test will just do the login, one test will just go and write a new post. And all tests are independent of each other. So I don't need to run Selenium separately, I don't need to do anything. So if you see my test is done, it will just go publish a new post. And the post published successfully. So if you see the output, so I have run 3 different files, test/home, test/login, and test/blog post. So if you see the detail, as my live output was true, you will see a detailed output here. All these colors are automatically provided. So for every test file, it will just provide a default color to it. So for home, it's my pink color, and it says all the pink color tests are just lying in my home file. So all the tests are complete and test.home finished with all the exceptions passed. So if you see my login test, which is the red one, it ends here saying that 3 total assertions are passed. So if anything's failed, it will show it here that 1 assertion failed to pass. And if you see my blog post test, it ends here saying 6 assertions passed. So in total, there were 8 assertions in my 3 files and all of them are passed. So if you quickly see the folder, I'll show you a normal home.js. It would look something like this. So I will have an export default, which is the ES6 way of writing. I have just mentioned that I want to use the page which is home page. So it will say page.homepage, and my homepage would look something like this, which we saw in the slides before. Like I have 2 elements, the title, and I have a login button. And I have some commands on the top which says api.launch URL, and I have a login button. So login button would be the same button which I have defined in my element. So click login button, we just click on this element. So if you see my home test now, what it does is, it takes the page which it wants to refer, client.page.homepage, and in the actual test where I'm launching the app, it launches app and it's written homepage.navigate. How will this work? Because in my homepage test, I have mentioned a command this.api.launch URL, and the default method of calling it in any of the tests is just .navigate. So if you have a method on the top of your page saying that this.api.launch URL, and your launch URL is coming from where? Actually, your launch URL is coming from your JSON. So if you see, we had a default launch URL mentioned here. So I have used it directly in my home page saying this.api.launch URL. And if you go in my home test, I just use homepage.manual. And it just goes to WordPress.com. And next is client.wait for element present. So as I mentioned earlier, in the pages there are separate methods like wait for element present, wait for element not to be visible, which can be directly page object selectors you can use there. So if you directly mention wait for element present the body, it will wait for the body to load in the WordPress site. And then next is expectations. The expect.element title to contain something, and then expecting the element to be visible. So if you see the way I have been, because I had a home page which had these selectors, the title and the login button, I am using it via this way. So I have to provide @@ and my selector. So this way I can use all the pages. So if show you the directory structure. Yeah. So if you see, we have text. So there's a test directory and there's a pages directory. So if you see, I have three files inside my test: the home, login, and blog post, which you saw in the command line which ran. And I have four pages, which defines all the selectors which I want to use in every of the pages. So if you see a login page, I would have separate selectors for that: the username, password, login, and what I want to do with all those methods would be defined in my login page command. And I would have a separate page which says I want to create a new post. So what actions I want to do? I want to enter a post title, I want to click preview, I want to close, I want to publish. So all these methods would be defined here. Yes. I think I should do it. And there is a GitHub repo added, Photoshop Nightwatch in my GitHub. You would get all the steps to install, how to do the installation, and all these test files will be provided. Thank you. Sorry? I am not sure about the limit yet. I don't think there is a limit. But how many would you want to spawn at a time? I am not sure that there is a limit on this. Yes. Would it even support that?
As it provides PageObject model and other things out of the box, does it have hooks for test data setup or the precondition setups for setting up the test or all those things out of the box?
Like, example?
Like, in case of similar framework, there are before and after hooks which are provided before test, after test, or in other frameworks as well, they provide this type of hooks where you can.
You have hooks. Yeah, I don't think you saw this. You do have hooks what you want to do. You have a before, you have a before each, you have after each, you have these.
One question. Right side. So you mentioned about the parallel execution, and I guess you showed how three different files are getting parallelly executed.
Yes.
So I would be assuming that the test methods which are written inside, even those can be executed parallelly. Is that the correct assumption?
Methods inside a test file, you mean?
Yes.
Although no, those will not be parallel. Only the files are separately parallelized.
So
The tests are sequential inside the file.
right, so that means if I want to do some like test methods to be parallel, I'll have to split them across multiple times.
You want test methods to be parallel. Why do you have something inside? Can you think of an example?
Yeah, it's a support that. It's just support like having this on class level and local level. So the question more towards like does this support?
This does not have parallel execution inside the test file so far, as far as I know.
Smriti,
Yeah.
can you use this framework for the performance testing?
I don't think this would give you you write numbers for that, there are better tools for doing performance testing like this, rather than using Nightwatch for performance testing. Would recommend those.
So Nightwatch is recommended for which type of application that would be more reliable?
Can be all your web apps and websites.
Okay.
But if you see, if you come to Angular apps, there is especially if I talk about Protractor, so Protractor is actually just designed for Angular. So if you have Angular apps, you will by default go for Protractor. But you can,
2 and plus 2 point plus are getting more better space in the market.
yeah, but even with Angular, you can use Nightwatch. But a more recommended framework is actually Protractor because Protractor is just built for Angular apps.
Okay.
But you can use Nightwatch for Angular apps as well.
And what is the reports are integrated or they have inbuilt report in this as well?
They have by default XML reporting. So if you see reports, they have by default XML reporting. It says how much time each test case took to run.
And where were the screenshots captured?
Yeah, so I can quickly fail a test because these tests are already passing.
Okay. So for pass you are not taking screenshot.
Pass are not even screenshot. So if I just change this to say log on. Yeah, I want to quickly go through just one thing more, which is the phantom.js settings. Yeah, so if you want to run your test, say in headless Mac Safari, yeah, so these are the settings you want to provide for running your test in CI via phantom.js. So what you have to do, so far they have the most efficient way is passing the user agent. So you pass phantom.js, phantom.js.page.settings and your user agent. So I have passed my Safari user agent here and I have passed my phantom.js binary file. So if I run my test now, this is the setting which I wanted to use. So there was a website which I didn't want to load images on. So I provided a shortcut for that, providing load images now. So I didn't want to wait for all the images to be loaded. So if you want to run this, so in my package JSON, if you see, I had a setting for this. That my test headless Mac Safari will run on this, will run via this. So I just need to provide npm run and my headless Safari. And it will not show it physically in browser because it's running in headless mode. So this should pass. And coming to your failure link, I think there are screenshots here. So there will be screenshots per test files which are failed. So as it filled in a login step itself, so I had 3 test files, home, login and log. So it created 3 separate folders. So it will create a test like this, that it didn't find the login button because I changed the selector to something. Everybody is ready to join the Nightwatch because Twinkle is there. Thank you.
I think this is one Nightwatch I won't be afraid of joining, even if winter is here. Please do give Smriti feedback. Write down on Smriti's there are